We are Hunt and Darton, Darton, Hunt. It's pretty interchangeable, really.
Well, except she's a little bit arrogant.
Well, if you're talking about then she's a bit moody, so yeah.
Anyway, we are artists and we've been working together for a very, very, very long time. 10 years, in fact.
It's a long time.
It's a really long time.
And we're here to help you, we hope, not freak out about this new Arts Council stuff when we just got used to the old stuff. Why has it changed? We hear you cry.
Don't worry though, and there's no need to panic.
We are here to talk you through the 4 investment principles that the Arts Council are suggesting should be at the heart of everything you do. These investment principles, or IPs, fancy, are what you need to think about in your practice or organisation to apply for funding from the Arts Council.
Now, the good news is that a lot of the 4 investment principles we are already doing or we're already starting to do.
We think they're about making good art and doing that in a responsible way because you care about people and the world around you.
You are a functioning human being, so you've got this.
Welcome to IPTV. Over 4 episodes, we are going to chat about the 4 investment principles and we are going to demystify these principles. We are going to do this by talking frankly to brilliant people across the sector to unpick what it means and what we might need to do for all the right reasons. So where are we today?
We are in Coventry at the incredibly shiny Daimler Powerhouse. Look around, it's incredible here. Not only was it the City of Culture 2021, but the art activity here is blooming brilliant.
It's off the wall.
I mean, for example, in this building, it's home to Imagineer, Highly Sprung, Talking Birds, Media Mania, and also Open Theatre.
That
Buzzing.
is
It's buzzing
a
here.
lot of art. Who do we have with us today and what's happening anyway?
Okay, well, we have, of course, Jane Hytch, CEO of Imagineer Productions, Sarah Worth, Executive Director for Highly Sprung, Richard Hayhow, Company Director for Open Theatre, Francis Neilson, Culture and Creative Director for Culture Coventry, and Zach Mensah, co-CEO, that's co-CEO, it's important, of Birmingham Museums Trust. And of course, representing the Arts Council, we have Amy Vaughan. She's a director of everything.
I think it's the Change programme.
Okay.
That's a lot of expertise. So what are the 4 investment principles? What are they?
Well. They are ambition and quality.
That one.
Environmental responsibility.
Right, stop. Just
Inclusivity.
yeah. Stop.
And relevance.
Stop.
And also dynamism.
Just stop. It's too much.
Okay.
Let's take one at a time.
Okay, I think that's probably a good idea.
Okay, so today's investment principle is...
Ambition and quality.
Do we even know what it means?
Yes, we do.
Do we?
No.
So you have an idea, right?
Yeah.
That you think is good.
Like when we wanted to make a cafe and proclaim that the entire cafe was an artwork.
So you have your idea and now you make a plan to deliver it. This is your ambition.
Okay, so we had the plan to make a cafe and call it art. We looked at existing business models of cafes. We looked at what they did. We took all of those existing operating procedures and we put them through the Hunt and Darton mill. We then made each element into what we would then describe as being art. We put the cafe in the empty shop and we opened for business.
We did. So, yeah.
For real on the high
For
street.
real. So then it's time to see what everyone on the high street thought. This is how we would start to work out if it was quality or not. See there? Quality coming in there.
Yeah.
We made sure we had evaluation forms, of course, and other ways of chalking in and stuff like that. But of course, in our cafe, that had to be part of the art.
The whole thing was a living, breathing experiment for us. It was basically like our live studio. We adjusted things as we went in response to the reactions from daily customers and our neighbours. And by the time we got to Edinburgh, the demand was for more art. So we added things like theme days and also a 3-course meal of performance that you could order to your table, which was not for consumption. It was indeed theatrical.
Then the verdict was good, thankfully.
Gosh,
Yeah, I know, yeah. We
Imagine
won
if it
awards.
wasn't.
We won awards and we toured for 5 years nationally and internationally with our little kooky cafe. Without that process, without the exposure to so many different kinds of people, it would not have progressed into the successful project it became.
And all that data we collected provided this and helped us to see this, and it enabled us to get even more funding to do it more in more places.
Basically. So that was our journey from our ambition to quality delivery. So when that people came, what we expected them to experience and thought was a great idea was actually a great idea, and they actually did experience this.
Our journey included how we made it good, who we showed it to make sure it was good, how we measured that, and anything that we then did to make it even better, using the responses we got from the people that came and the facts. This is an example, okay? I'm aiming to be a kettle chip, and then I'm getting out there and showing that to people. I'm showing them that I'm a kettle chip, and then I'm seeing if they think that I'm a kettle chip or if, in fact, I'm more like a Whatset.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so probably time we move on to our guests. So here they all are. Welcome to the show.
Now, for those of you that don't know, Richard is company director for Open Theatre that has been developing work with young people with learning disabilities through non-verbal physical theatre for over 30 years. At the heart of their practice has always been a commitment to develop, promote and sustain the creativity and artistry of people with learning disabilities.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Richard.
Yes.
And that question is, the idea of what quality is so subjective, of course. But if you listen to the people who the work is made for, surely this is only a good thing. But are there benefits you have found from doing this?
Do we listen to other people in terms of what we create and how we create it and so on? And I think categorically yes is the answer, because fundamentally what's the point of doing it if it is not in that sense outward looking? I think what's interesting for us as the company we are is that we have developed a particular kind of practice or a process that we engage in, and therefore that consultation process of who we're listening to are the actual people we're working with, the young people we're working with, and our practice and the process is a consultation process as well. So it's how enabling those young people to have a voice in their creative practice and listening to that voice clearly and adapting what you do all the time to their particular aspirations and needs. So you have to listen and kind of engage with people, but also understand what they're saying, why they're saying it, and where it's coming from. And sometimes, yes, it informs what you do, but sometimes you have to go, well, I'm sorry, that's your view. It's not ours.
Yeah, because we were talking about it as a kind of craft, you know, like in the fact that when you're working in a studio, we're a collaboration and you're naturally editing, expanding and doing these things in a kind of studio capacity. And this is almost like just a formalization of that. But actually, it's quite a natural thing for artist organizations and artists to do in collaborations through conversation, through creation, through all the expertise that you bring in. And you know, so at the point where you're just being asked to write it down, we don't just have to kind of go, oh my goodness, it's ruined the art.
Okay, next up we're going to be chatting to Jane. She is the CEO of Imagineer Productions. Imagineer make extraordinary outdoor and site-specific work at the intersection of art and engineering, environmental and social change. Their projects bring together artists and creative thinkers with engineers, architects, educationalists and designers.
How do you feel you and your team might have to change to include the principle, ambition and quality? What do you feel you're already doing, and what are you already going to do to make it happen?
For me, it's always being able to know and to test and to judge, in a sense, how people are feeling all the way through. You know, that you talked about data and collecting it, and I think there's the need to understand emotionally also how people are feeling. So in our work, our evaluation process is totally embedded. And people know that they can change the course of the action of the project because they're always feeding into it. And we're listening. We give people a journal and they can draw in it, write in it, and say horrible things about, you know, let us read whatever they want us to read. But just that thing of having a book that they can write in whenever they want to is really, really useful.
That's a lovely idea.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've tried to do is give people an opportunity to feedback afterwards when they've had time to consider what they've seen. So we give people a little QR code, like a little bank card thing, and they go back home and then they get onto their computers and they write to us, and it's really great. Yes, we're creating the art, but we're also listening, gathering information, changing, shifting.
Moving over to Sarah, who is Executive Director for Strung. It's the UK's leading physical theatre company making work for and with children and young people. They take theatre beyond words, creating award-winning outdoor and indoor performances that tell stories of histories and our futures primarily through movement, gesture and dance.
Can you really find out whether an idea is good?
Sometimes it isn't until you're presenting that idea in front of people that you're really testing whether it's a good idea. I suppose the biggest test is then for us once it's out in that public space. And we don't create work for audiences that make a decision, we're going to deliberately go along and see this piece of work. Often we create pieces of work which kind of interrupt daily life. And for us, one of the biggest tests of our work is it good enough to give people a reason to stop and watch?
How do people tell you your work is good?
An example of the latest piece that we made, we ensured that we brought groups of young people in to see the piece we were making in process. So they sat in the rehearsal room with us, and that was a really amazing opportunity to say, here's this section, what does it say to you, what does it mean? And they would go, I don't get it. Doesn't mean anything. And immediately then you can go, right, well, this isn't landing, this isn't communicating in the way that it should, this isn't right for the audience that we're going to present it to, we need to make a change. I also would really urge people to think of it as something that informs your process throughout, and the end feedback is really, really important, but kind of is helping you then to develop your next idea.
How do you change your work if it isn't doing what you thought?
So when we did our peer feedback, there was one section of our performance that kept being discussed, and it was discussed in enough length that made me think I need to act upon this. So the way that then fed back into the process was when we went back in to re-rehearse the piece, I had to change that.
What was it?
It was a plastic bag.
A plastic bag?
It was a plastic bag going in someone's face. And it just didn't make any sense for the audience. And it was irrelevant, so I cut it. And that's why your quality check, your evaluation process needs to take into consideration a wide range of voices, because you need to then have that wide context to think, what am I listening to? What is relevant to my work and my ambition? And what is relevant to the audiences that I'm trying to serve?
For those of you that don't know, Frances is Culture and Creative Director for Culture Coventry. Culture Coventry is the trust that manages 3 of Coventry's finest visitor attractions. That's Coventry Transport Museum. Have you been there? No?
No.
The award-winning Herbert Art Gallery Museum. Have you been there?
Don't keep asking me.
And the Lunt Roman Fort. Between them, the attractions proudly tell stories of Coventry's unique history to over 800,000 visitors per year from around the world. So, Frances, we have a question for you.
What changes do you think this principle might inspire, or change it might make, if any?
The quality part has shifted in terms of how we determine quality. So I think previously we've talked about quality in terms of just the art form. But what this is asking us to do is actually to put out our ambition and then check in with more than just, hey Sarah, what did you think? And much broader than that. And actually, I know we're only talking about one investment principle, but actually all of them interconnect, and it's really difficult not to connect them. So in terms of the inclusion and relevance, we talk about how diversity enriches the art and makes it accessible, and just, I suppose, a really rich kind of narrative of our country's cultural assets. And actually, by asking those different people, what do you think, and shifting your practice, not only are we creating a really rich and diverse offer, but we're also remaining relevant. So I think this is the most interesting shift, I think, that the Arts Council have brought in, is that the quality isn't necessarily just defined by my idea, it's defined, my ambition is put out on the table, and then the quality is actually defined by how people receive that, how people hold that, and then how people support you to reposition that. And I think that's exciting. It's not just about data though, is it? I think we are finding new ways of finding feedback. And I think what's really exciting as artists, as creatives, is that we are collaborators. And I think we've always talked about collaboration being at the heart of excellence. But I think it's really important that the word excellence has been removed, because that puts so much pressure when you're writing a funding application to describe excellence. Describing what your ambition is becomes a lot easier, and how you're going to manage that in terms of track that.
When I first read about risk taking and we had a conversation, I was like, really? Are you going to really let us do it? Are you really going to let us do it? Really? And I think it's in this idea of this principle with the ambition and quality that it's like, yes, but we're not going to do it without you putting some planning in and some points of measurement. And it's like, well, if that's the price we have to pay to be a bit more risky, okay, fine, I'll do it.
We're going to move on to Zach. Zach is the co-CEO of Birmingham Museum Trust. Birmingham Museums Trust has 9 extraordinary venues that provide a fascinating glimpse into Birmingham's rich and vibrant past and showcase world-class museum collections.
What have you begged, borrowed, or stolen, any good practice to improve the quality of your guests' experience?
Our museums, pre-pandemic, would have had up to 1 million people a year visiting. Now, there are lots of times when they're doing things you want them to do, and there are lots of opportunities for people to do their own thing, go off script, as it were. And you say, I wish everyone would follow around the journey, from A to B, or from the start of prehistory right through. So IKEA is a good example, actually, from another industry of someone, understanding those touch points. From when even before you arrive, they think, right, well, what's your experience going to be like, finding an IKEA? And so we're trying to understand better who our audiences are. And so, how can we, when you're just walking past one of the museums, think actually that's somewhere for me to pop in? Even if they don't ever come back, let's give them, a really good experience. And so for us, I think the user journey stuff is really important.
It does lead me on to the next question, but how do you stay in touch with what people are thinking and feeling?
So a key thing for us is to spend a lot of our time observing people. So I roughly say that you should be spending, 60% of your time just watching what people do and say about you, whether it be online or on site. So you can ask people, you should ask people, what do you like, what do you think you do? Then watch what they do and iterate. So we have a generic exit survey, which means simply we ask people 5 questions, and then over time we can benchmark that. So a simple one for me is satisfaction. Did you have a good time today? That measure is a really simple one. And if they did, you can do more of it. And if they didn't, you have to think about it. Actually, after you ask about 10 people, you can ask 1,000 more, but they're probably going to have just very small variations on what you're saying. So I would encourage people who are watching this to not be intimidated about asking people, but you don't have to ask all the people.
When we say data, we automatically go to the kind of numerical data, the on-off, the binary. But actually, data comes in many forms, and I think maybe change data.
You can also make data out of some of those moments,
yes, you can.
out of those observations.
How? That's a really interesting question.
I said earlier about we measure the amount of time that someone might, do they stay and watch the whole show beginning to end? Do they leave after the first 5 minutes? What is the percentage of people who are staying for the duration of the piece? How many people from the audience choose to stay when we ask them to enter into conversations with us? And those things are very in the moment, very experienced, but we can just turn that into quantitative data.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're becoming scientists.
Data can be numbers and words, can't it?
Yes.
Like data doesn't have to just be numbers.
Data doesn't have to just be numbers. I think that needs to be said. I think it is a problematic word. If you're intimidated, I'm not really good with data, or I'm not good on computers. It's a real thing that could really help you, that is transforming our world all the time. How essential is the role of people in making better work for other people?
However you think of our service, at some point, it should be about serving people. And so for us, everything we do, whether it be our ambition, the quality of the things that we produce, is all about people, because the fancy way of saying your business model is like doing good things for people is your business, because if you do bad things, they won't come. Your business falls apart. So really, if you can just focus on serving people, with dignity, doing it respectfully, doing it with them, that will lead to people wanting to spend time with you, which will ultimately lead to them spending either time, money or effort, which then means that you can be self-sustaining. So like we all spend a lot of time, I think, thinking, trying to be really clever or what's new and sexy we can talk about. And it's like, actually, let's go back to the original reason why museums were built, and it was for people.
And on that note, we're going to pause and take a break because we're going to be getting some food from the local cafe, Gloria and Leela. So we'll be back soon. Take care. Welcome back to IPTV. It's really exciting.
It's really exciting. It's even more exciting, and this is my favourite bit, because we've got Emma and Ailish from Gloria and Lil's, a cafe. And if you want to go, it can be found on Parkside in Coventry, of course.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Could you tell us a wee bit about the cafe?
We made a thing. It was a cafe, and we sell lovely food that we make ourselves, and we think you should come and visit.
We've got a flatbread there that's been cut up into little bite-sized pizzas with hummus and pesto and pine nuts on the top there, and then we've just got some dill pickles, which are very lightly pickled with sugar and cider vinegar and some dill in there.
And then you've got some Rocky Road and some white tiffin, which both happen to be vegan. And the surprise in the white tiffin is that it's got Horlicks in, which takes everybody by surprise, and some classic brownie.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Take care. It's great. I think the show has got a lot better now that we've got people eating cake. It's very much our zone, isn't it?
Yeah. That's one of our strategies, really, to engage people, is to offer them cake.
But we're going to carry on because we haven't even had Amy Vaughan of Arts Council fame. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. It would be great to hear your thoughts.
We spent a long time on these. This is like 2-3 years since we started doing the consult. Well, longer than that, isn't it? Since we actually started the consultation for our strategy, and then the investment principles came out of that, and then it feels like a they're kind of out in the world now, and it's really, really good to hear people talking about them, even though some of that might be challenging and difficult and there's a lot of change involved. It's really encouraging and heartening to hear not just people talking about them, but talking about them in their own context and what it means for them, because that is the point, is that actually you take the investment principles and you apply it to your own context. And I can't express enough how that is, we haven't got a set expectation of what they're all going to look like. It's very much, listening and hearing what's coming back and hearing what people are doing with them. And it's the process of using them that is more important than to us than, what it is for your organisation specifically. So I think I've heard some really great things today. A couple of things I'd pick up on is the idea of this particular investment principle as a loop. So it doesn't end with the feedback and the evaluation, that feeds back into the ambition, and then that just carries on.
I mean, I think they definitely are like tools, and it's really great to hear how much work went into making them. I think like my immediate anxiety when you were talking there and you were saying, they could be interpreted in different ways. You could, it's all about doing it in different things. And I was just like, we need to know what to do. That's our knee-jerk response. And I think it's because at the point where you change something, we want clarity, but in its very nature, you're saying it's a process, which is fair enough. But I think it would be good to hear a bit about that.
Using ambition and quality as the example. If you are, if you're a practitioner or an artist, a creative in whatever, and you're putting in a small project grant application, it might be your first application, and you look at that form and you go, good grief, like where do I start? For me, with ambition and quality, it's optional. You don't have to use it in your application. You can use it if it feels right. But listening to the discussion today, you can hear that it is useful. It will be useful. So can you look at it and go, okay, what I'm going to say here is I am going to set myself an ambition. I am going to get a plan in place for how I might achieve that. But that's all I'm going to do this time. That's what I'm going to start with, is that idea of setting my ambition. The next time I put a project together, I'm going to build on that. I'm going to go a little bit further with that. It doesn't have to be the completed picture now. It's a 10-year strategy. It will take people time to get to grips with it and to kind of get it embedded in what they do. If you're a larger organisation and you're applying for a national portfolio bid, or you're coming in for a very large project grant, there is a bigger expectation. And there is an expectation that actually you've spent some time, you've thought about this, you've talked to your governance, whether that's a board or a steering group, or whatever your structure is, that you've looked at, in this case, ambition and quality, and said, are we all signed up to this? Have we built this in to our sort of reporting processes? Who's going to look at it? How are we going to know we are being successful in what we've set out to do? And those are the things that we're looking for.
It's kind of understanding what you want to do and then going, oh yes, that is ambition. Yeah. Rather than going, oh, what's my ambition? I've got to work it out because I've got to tell the Arts Council. Just think about what you really want to do, and then that name, ambition, could easily apply to that.
Definitely. I think, because also when you first heard it, there's a knee-jerk thing to kind of almost use to say, oh, we're ambitious and we have quality, as a kind of knee-jerk reaction to it. And it's actually not the word ambitious, it's the word ambition and what that sets out. And that clarity instantly helped us when we were talking.
And I know it's really difficult, and I completely recognise that we're holding the funding strings, and therefore it's very difficult to go, I can't tell the Arts Council it didn't go right because I've told them I was going to do this. The great thing about this investment principle is you can say it didn't go the way we thought it was going to go, because you're evaluating yourself and you're going, that didn't happen and that didn't happen. We didn't reach as many people as we thought, but we did do this and we did do this. Therefore, in our next project, we've learned from that, and here's how we're going to move on from that. My pivotal bit of advice about ambition and quality would be about measuring success as to what it looks like for you, and aligning it with your ambition. Like, not everyone is going to have a massive department that can go out and survey their entire audience. Not everyone has a box office. Not everyone has all of these kind of resources at their fingertips to be able to conduct massive feedback surveys. And I think we've touched on it a lot today. I've heard a lot of talk about this, but it's all about what is appropriate for you. If your feedback is designed by what your ambition is, you will find it difficult to go wrong, because you'll be heading for that ambition and you'll be measuring the success towards that ambition. And if that means you sit and you watch people and you record their responses, and then you are perhaps combining that with a little bit of feedback data that you get through emails or whatever, and that fits the sort of scale of your organisation or your project, then that is fine. And there is no expectation that a tiny touring company will have the same level of feedback mechanisms and evaluation mechanisms that a huge institution might have. It's got to be scalable. If it just becomes the way that you approach things more generally as well, then, because I had a really interesting discussion with somebody who was saying, what is that? What is the nonsense in that principle about user perception? What on earth are you going on about? And I said, well, it's, what do you think you do, and what do other people think you do, and how different is that? And do you want to move the idea of what you do towards them, or do you want to move them towards you? Because that will inform your planning. It will inform how you want to communicate with them, etc., etc.
So you're nearly out of the spotlight, Amy. But to end our time with you, we've got one more very special question that was prepared by a lovely local this morning who we found, who's called Harry.
How can we make sure, by doing the right thing to get funding, like with embedding the new IPs, we're not losing the identity of art, or worse, compromising our art so much that it doesn't make sense anymore, or everything starts looking the same? And do you prefer Star Wars or axolotls?
I'll do the first question first and the trickier question second. The art, the identity of the art, and I think what he's asking me is, does it all just become the same because everybody's trying to fulfil the same things? And I think what I would say back to young Harry is that I would return to what I said about this having to be suited to you and what you do and what your organisation is. Because if it does begin to look like everybody else's, you'd probably anyway be going, oh, we want to be different. We want to be individual in what we do. We want to be specialists in what we do. We don't want to look like everyone else. And if you're using this investment principle really well, that won't happen, because you will be hearing that feedback and you will be constantly updating and renewing and refreshing what you do, even if it's doing the same thing, even better and better and better and better.
Axolotl or Star Wars?
Definitely Star Wars.
Star Wars. Star Wars. So we'll let Harry know, because we promised him we would. So Star Wars. Thank you very much, Amy.
Okay, so before we go, we've got one final question for the panel. It's going to be quick fire, like Hunt said. What is the best thing about this investment principle? Richard, go.
Risk-taking.
Risk-taking. Jane?
It allows you to be organic in your development and growth.
Fantastic. Sarah?
Embedding ways to measure quality as part of your creative process.
Francis?
Just allowing other people to be part of your process and to be able to collaborate.
Brilliant. Zach?
You can set your own scale to make a ruckus.
Excellent. And Amy?
Exploration.
Oh, didn't they do well?
They did, because that was a spectrum of best bits. And despite my reservations about this, it's time for Darton's takeaway of this IP, which is a regular feature on the show. What did you want to call it?
Darton's digestion, ambition and quality. If you've got a good idea, make it happen. There's more. Check it's good, but make sure the people that you're checking it's good with aren't just your mates.
That is a breath of fresh air and a beautiful way to finish, because that is just, I've just gone, oh. This was IPTV, and we will see you next time. A massive thanks to our panel. Lovely to see you all. It's a goodbye, isn't it? This was IPTV. Goodbye.